My name is Edgar Fouché. I spent 20 years with the U.S. Air Force and another 8 years as an engineering program manager for defense contractors. I was on research and development and flight operational test and evaluation for the F-15, the F-16, the A-10, the B-1, and the F-117 when they were new. I was involved in automatic test equipment, crypto, electronic countermeasures, and aircraft development. I believe that all the major aircraft companies are involved in one way or another. Lockheed Skunk Works has always been the lead as far as advanced technology. But Los Alamos, Sandia, Lawrence Livermore also support this development. Ms. Boeing was involved in the TR-3A Manta, which is a bat-wing-shaped stealth vehicle that originally flew out of Groom. When I was doing interviews with defense contractors and SR-71 pilots and engineers that had worked like programs, I'd trace back the development of the magnetic field disruptor as far back as 1965 with General Dynamics Convair Division. At that time, the program had been 10 years old. They were reverse engineering technology that wasn't available at that time. The difference between normal evolution of science, where papers are written and pros and cons are debated on the theories, and then a practical experiment is developed, and once the experiment is proven, practical applications of this new technology is sought after, usually a Department of Defense for weapons or aircraft. But in 1965, when my friend was working the magnetic field disruptor, they actually had information on what the craft would do, what it was made out of, and things like size, weight, density, but they had no papers written on it, no theories, and they were basically told, build one of these from the pieces, make it work, and explain it to us how it works. From the magnetic field disruptor, when it was tested finally in the mid-80s at Papoose, they fired up the accelerator and it didn't do anything. And later, looking at the test data, they found out that 89% of the weight and mass was reduced in proximity to the accelerator. So when you reverse engineer a UFO and it only works 89% of what they think it's going to do, then the only thing you can do is hang a triangular-shaped body with advanced multi-mode rockets, one on each corner of the triangle, and fly the accelerator, which was developed from the crashed saucers, around. And you only have to propel 11% of the triangle because 89% of the mass and weight is reduced. The magnetic field disruptor, which is the core of the technology in the flying triangles, was developed from reverse engineering. There was no evolution of science that produced this technology. From the people I talked to, the technology was anywhere from 30 to 50 years ahead of anything possible to working with gravity. Even today, the papers written on controlling gravity in one aspect or another are controversial. So to have a vehicle that actually can affect gravity by warping it, this is not anti-gravity, but it essentially warps gravity around the accelerator. The technology was being worked on as far back as the mid-50s that I've been able to trace. There was and still are no papers, scientific papers, written supporting the theories that allow this technology to work. The flying triangle, the prototype, was 200 feet across. It was first flown in 1989 or 1990. The operational version of the TR-3B flying triangle is 600 feet across. The fact that it's been spotted doing 40G turns, most people say, well, the pilots couldn't take 40G turns. 40 gravitational forces is enough to crush most people. However, if you compute 89% reduction of 40 Gs, you basically have 4.1 Gs that the pilots take because the mass and weight's reduced, also the G forces. And a person can take 4 Gs comfortably. Can travel at Mach 9 plus. I don't have the latest specifications, but the prototype flew at Mach 9 vertically or horizontally. It could obtain suborbital altitudes. It is essentially a long loiter time surveillance and reconnaissance craft. The minimum crew of the TR-3B is 4. I don't know what the maximum capacity is. The flying wings were first flown in the U.S. in 1948, and they were essentially built by Northrop. There were circular wing aircraft, or saucers, being prototyped and tested by the Nazis in World War II. Some of their science and technology and scientists were brought over to the United States. For example, A.V. Rowe or Avro had a contract with the Department of Defense and built several prototypes of the flying saucer in Canada. They had told citizens for years that after the first Avro car did not meet specifications, the program was canceled. Recent Freedom of Information Act releases have showed that many versions of the Avro saucer were built and tested and flown out of Groom Lake in the 60s. The Department of Defense strives on secrecy. There's more money going into black technology than ever before. There's less world threats, so you would think that the defense budgets would be reduced, but in essence, we're spending more now on black programs than we ever have. The most fascinating top secret facility that I know of is the Defense Advanced Research Center, which is called DARC, which is based at Papoose Lake, south of Groom Lake in Area 51. It's a facility that goes 10 stories underground and has a massive amount of floor space. The hangars for the TR-3B flying triangle and TR-3A flying batwing manta are housed and serviced because the depot is at Papoose. Essentially, the aircraft can be parked in hangars built in the sides of hills. The hangars have floors much like carrier decks to where the aircraft can be taken down many levels below to be serviced and maintained. That's where the logistics support is for these black aircraft. When I was assigned to Nellis Air Force Base in the late 70s, I worked electronic countermeasures. I was certified on certain crypto equipment. All cryptological equipment in the U.S. is controlled by the National Security Agency and a top secret Q and crypto access clearances. I was assigned to Groom Lake Air Base for 2 weeks temporary to repair some crypto equipment that was being maintained by a person that was permanently assigned there but had to go on emergency leave. One of the first things that I noticed that was unusual for my experiences was you have to wear these very myopic, they almost look like welder's glasses. They have thick polarized lenses. There's no peripheral vision. Anything beyond 30 feet is totally blurred. You have to wear these. Part of the briefing the security people give you is anytime you're outside a hangar, you have to wear those. If you're not permanently assigned there, you have to be escorted. And all escorts are armed escorts. So you always remember what causes you discomfort. A couple of friends of mine that flew the SR-71 and other prototype advanced vehicles at Groom all complained about having to wear the glasses. And it fascinates me that all these people that supposedly have worked at Groom Air Base have never mentioned these uncomfortable glasses you have to wear. Stealth and reconnaissance aircraft are essentially developed by the Air Force and the Navy. The reconnaissance aircraft such as the SR-71, the SR-75 that replaced it, the TR-3A flying batwing or manta, the TR-3B flying triangle or Astra are joint funded by the National Reconnaissance Office, the National Security Agency, the CIA, and the U.S. Air Force. The U.S. Air Force has operational control of the vehicles and the pilots. The missions are coordinated amongst the agencies that provided the black funding for these programs. They're primarily reconnaissance and intelligence-oriented aircraft. Every military agency is involved in recovering crashed aircraft, whether it's foreign technology, such as foreign countries, or alien artifacts that are recovered. But primarily in 1947, when the Air Force was established, they became the primary operational control of all alien artifacts. The Defense Advanced Research Center at Papoose, which is primarily manned by the Air Force and the Navy, the National Reconnaissance Office, the CIA, and the National Security Agency, controls all research, development, logistics, and control of crashed alien artifacts. I have personally not a lot of information on actual aliens with the crashed vehicles. I was sent 2 documents by a friend of mine whose father had worked at the National Security Agency almost 30 years. He was one of the 5 people that put me in contact with his contacts while I was developing the book Alien Rapture. These 2 documents, one was the new revised charter during the Reagan administration, which says on the cover page that it's signed by proxy, which leads me to believe, and I was told, that the presidents haven't been involved since Truman. The second document we obtained was the autopsy report, attachment D to the Eisenhower report. Now, the names and dates were left off these documents, but what leads me to believe that they are accurate is it talks about the removable lenses of the aliens before Colonel Corso had a manuscript, long before Santilli ever had the alien autopsy film. It talks about a geo-organ, which is pictured in the alien autopsy, but nobody ever brings attention to it. From the people I've talked to on the inside, the alien autopsy was made from disinformation. It was funded by the government. It is 90% accurate. But as we all know, nobody's running across 6-fingered aliens. The geo-organ, when you look at the autopsy that was showed on TV, is essentially one round, flattish organ in the center of the abdomen of the alien. If you were to design or genetically engineer a being, you probably wouldn't have a bunch of different organs that function separately on their own. You would integrate the bioorganisms into one. I talked to several judge, advocate, general lawyers, and publishing lawyers before I allowed the manuscript to be read by anybody besides Brad Steiger. Essentially, I cannot talk about any programs I work directly on, the technology, the people assigned to it, or any other information involved with those programs. However, there's nothing against the Secrets Acts or the law to talk about secondhand information you get from people that you've known 20 or 30 years that you trust with your life. The information I talk about publicly is all secondhand information from people I've known 20 or 30 years. Essentially, when you sign certain Secrets Acts, you cannot speak about it for 30 years or more. In some cases, what you sign says you can never speak about it unless you're authorized to. I believe eventually there's always a trickle-down effect from black technology to commercial technology. The problem that most people have is that we spend billions of dollars on black technology and we keep it secret until every other country in the world discovers this technology, puts it out commercially, and then we're behind, essentially putting our own commerce secondary to other countries. We have energy technology and transportation technologies that could revolutionize and make the world better as we sit here, but it's being kept secret. Eventually, the Germans, the French, the Japanese will put out technology that they learn from us, or reverse engineer, or create on their own, that we could have a lead in. Essentially, people that have worked in the military or within the Department of Defense. Most people have pensions or retirements or benefits that they wish to protect. They have families they wish to protect. A lot of people are running around saying that they work top secret programs and are talking about them in detail. I have a hard time believing that because I interviewed over 40 people that had worked within the Department of Defense, the National Security Agency, had worked black development programs. I knew this personally. They would never talk to the media. They were quite nervous to even talk to me. I couldn't even use my cassette recorder to record them or take notes. They were willing to talk to me one-on-one with the promise that I would not reveal their names. But these people, some are afraid for their physical safety or their families. Others are only worried about their retirement pensions and benefits. It's different for different people. Some people that I was put in contact with trusted me, but they wouldn't talk to me at all because of what they felt was patriotism. From what I know from interviewing people and experiences that I've had, we have no functional flying saucers that meet the requirements for neither reconnaissance nor strategic missions. The problem with the flying saucers is they use a form of propulsion that we haven't perfected. When we perfected the magnetic field disruptor, which is essentially a reverse engineered UFO propulsion system, it only worked 89% as effective as it should. At 100%, it would have been able to repel gravity and you could use it as a propulsive force. But when you only have something that works 89%, that reduces mass and weight and G-forces by 89%, the only option you have to take advantage of this technology in an aerospace vehicle is to hang a triangular body on it, put 3 multi-mode engines on it, and fly this propulsion system around. I keep hearing stories of different vehicles that we use. We have something called a sun sieve that stays in orbit. It services National Reconnaissance Office and National Security Agency satellites. The new satellites are built to be serviced by robotic vehicles. The sun sieve was essentially orbited from the back of the SR-75, which replaced the SR-71. When the SR-75 gets up to 110,000 feet altitude, it launches the SCRAMP SR-74 for suborbital missions, or it can launch the sun sieve, which stays in permanent orbit to repair these craft. And so, reportedly, both the SR-74 SCRAMP, which is manned, and the sun sieve, which is a robotic vehicle, can attain orbit and potentially go to the moon. I hear stories about vehicles that have been going to the moon for 10 years, but I have not enough information to believe that it's actually going on. I believe that all forms of 75 swept-wing aircraft, delta-shaped aircraft, lifting bodies, and triangular-shaped vehicles belong to the U.S. government or some other earthly government. I believe that all these triangular and swept-wing configurations, the latest ones were developed from reverse engineering technology. So it would lead me to believe that all circular or tubular vehicles belong to some sentient race not from the Earth. I was told by 2 friends of mine that are essentially sources, as you'd call them, that the TR-3B, the operational version, which is 600 feet across, caused the Phoenix light. The effect was caused by holographic generators that I don't have a lot of details of the technology. I'm getting pieces, and essentially they use some type of beam, focusing beam, to agitate or resonate molecules of the air, such as nitrogen and oxygen. And then at that same point, they're using lasers to create a 3-dimensional object on this agitated field. At this point, they can only generate balls of light. Usually they're orange or red, I've heard of some blue. So if you take a craft like the TR-3B that has electrochromatic coating that can change colors, reflectiveness, and radar absorptiveness, it can cloak itself, it could look like the sky. Most of the triangles are only spotted from the bottom at night, where people have taken pictures of silhouettes, because it has this ability to change its configuration, such as color or patterns, such as a star field or a cloud field. So if the TR-3B, which I believe it was over Phoenix and generating these holographic balls of light, all you would see would the lights and not the vehicle. I believe eventually all technology comes forward, but we have 2 problems now. One is the government doesn't want to admit how many billions of dollars they're putting into black programs. And 2, some of the technology is so extraordinary and connected back as far back as the Roswell crash and other crashes, alien vehicles that we've reverse engineered. I'm not sure if the information will be forthright unless one crashes and CNN happens to show up and film it before it's carted off. The flying bat wing configurations, or flying wings that are such as the TR-3A and the flying triangles, are essentially tactical reconnaissance vehicles. I know nothing of the weapon systems. There are other vehicles, such as the replacement for the F-111 swing-wing bomber, that have been called several different names, that are fighters and bombers that are armed with weapons. I've essentially concentrated on the technology involved with the flying triangles. During the development of my book, I essentially started off with 5 of my closest friends who had worked in the Department of Defense and the Air Force for 20 to 30 years. Most of them I'd known since the Vietnam conflict. We decided to write the book trying to detail how the reverse engineering of technology brought forth such vehicles as the TR-3B. We made a pact that they would put me in contact with their closest friends and that I would go personally, face-to-face, talk to them because they would not talk to me over the phone or send me information. During this process, I tried in every case to only use information in the book and my presentation that I had at least 2 sources of accurate information. I heard wild stories at times from people I really respected and trusted, but we did not develop this information if we didn't have more than one source. I applaud everybody's effort to bring out more information to the government and make the government more open with talking about crashed vehicles and advanced technology. But as far as getting on somebody's list to talk about this technology or my own personal experiences, I feel like until the list is developed and people start talking without any harm coming to them, I'll sit back and wait. I believe that the Germans and the Japanese have technology that is close to what we developed in the early 1990s, and that you will see more odd-shaped vehicles flying around. I heard in 1994 that the TR-3B prototype, which is 200 feet across, was being used by the Navy, and that the Navy was actually retrofitting a carrier to where this thing could land on a carrier and be taken below deck for repairs and to be out of observation from planes or people that pass by. To my knowledge, the largest vehicle flying is the 600 feet operational model of the TR-3B. However, the holographic generators on the TR-3A and the TR-3B can project images out to 2 miles. I think the goal for holographic generators is to essentially be able to project any type image they want. I believe the state of the technology is to where they can only project geometric objects. But you can only imagine what a vehicle would be like if you could project a giant monster in front of troops that was roaring that looked lifelike, or if a godlike figure appeared on a cloud and told the enemy to surrender. There's any number of, is only limited by your imagination. I believe that the Foo Fighters were essentially some type of alien or sentient controlled objects. The holographic generators are developed through the normal progression of laser and holographic technology. Alien Rapture The Chosen by Edgar Fouché, myself, and Brad Steiger is available on Amazon.com, BarnesandNoble.com, through Galdi Press at 1-800-777-3454, or through our webpage, FouchéMedia.com, FOUCHEMEDIA.com. These are pictures of the flying triangle taken in 1969 in Romania, 1967 in Bulgaria. The top 2 were taken in Belgium in 1989 and 90. You can see the exhaust from the 3 multi-mode rocket engines on the top 2 pictures. These pictures have been greatly enhanced, or they're not very good quality. The pictures, actual photographs? Yes, actual photographs. Okay. The top picture of the flying triangle is the TR-3B, which has 3 multi-mode nuclear rocket engines on each corner, which you can see while it's in flight. This is a computer-enhanced composite picture generated by a computer based on all the specifications of known triangular vehicles. This is a schematic representation of the TR-3B from the top view, the bottom view, and the side view. Some people see in the side view has described this as cigar-shaped or tubular-shaped. This is a picture of the B-2 bomber. It's actually a model. The picture is developed by the Air Force Recruiting Service. This is a color picture of the YB-49 Flying Wing taken in 1948. I got this from an Air Force person. A lot of people have mistaken the F-117 stealth fighter as a UFO. You can see from this direction of the aircraft at night, it does look like a UFO. Okay. This is a picture of the prototype TR-3B flying triangle Astra. It's 200 feet across, carries a crew of 4.
Okay. What about the
This is the operational version of the TR-3B flying triangle. It's 600 feet across, uses 3 multi-mode rocket engines, one mounted on each corner underneath for propulsion. This is a picture of the TR-3B flying triangle, which is 600 feet across. It uses a magnetic field disruptor that disrupts gravity and reduces mass and weight by 89% and also reduces the G-forces the pilots feel.